Fitting up the left-hand panel, and I've taken it over and fitted up on the panel on the side, and then I started making the bend where this goes over that lower longeron and down around, and I marked where the bend goes and brought it over here and used my bending brake. This is what I use for a bending brake. Just push that over there and just push it down by hand. But I just put a little tape over this door opening, this lower door opening bar, and laid that panel over it and pushed it down by hand. That's what I did with the one on the right side. And here's the bend in it. That precision tooling that we used to make that bend, measure and everything, just worked out just fine. It was worth every penny I paid for it. Well, that bend is nice and tight around there. This panel is fitted up pretty close on there. And we'll see if we can't get the holes drilled in that without screwing it up. I haven't been very happy with the way my holes have been turning out. I made the first panel and fitted it up just like I did this one, and then I started drilling my holes in here for the screws in this bottom section first and get it on tight, and then we can fold up around here. We've got a little more leeway on this top section than we do on the bottom section. Anyway, I went ahead and started drilling my holes out on that bottom section, and they just weren't turning out at all. So I made up another panel and stuck it on there, and I did a little better on the holes on that one, but it still wasn't as good as I would have liked. Well, on the other airframe, and on a typical Supercub airframe, they got these Piper channels in here, the real thin U channel in here, that gingerbread, whatever they call it, that makes up kind of a superstructure around the airframe. It's non-structural, but it makes up the shape of the airframe over the top window, and this structure around this cage here, and you've got the fabric comes up to here to this rear U channel and glues to it, and then you've got this panel in here as a filler panel, and then the boot cowl comes back. There's another U channel that goes around here all the way around the bottom, and the boot cowl then screws into it. And on a typical Supercub, what they'll do is put those panels up there and just shoot sheet metal screws through there, and that's what holds everything on, is just sheet metal screws. The other airframe had number 4 screws back here, and I don't remember whether it had 4s or 6s. It seems like it had 6s here on the boot cowl where it attaches. But those screws, sheet metal screws in there, the vibrations and stuff over time, even though we didn't take these panels on and off regularly, just the vibration gets the screws come loose, and you tighten them in there, and of course every time you tighten them, even if you don't over torque them, it opens those holes up just a little bit more until eventually the screw won't stay in it anymore, and then you put a bigger screw in it, and you go from a number 4 to a number 6 to a number 8, and pretty soon you're a 14. Great big old honking screw in there. And that other fuselage was testament to that, because these U channels all look like Swiss cheese in there, where they'd had different screws put in them over time. I wound up, instead of going to oversized screws, when I only had a couple little screws that came loose, I would squirt a little bit of clear RTV in the hole, and then put the screw in there and let the RTV cure so it would hold it in there. So on this airframe, when I built it, I put nut plates in it. Put number 4 nut plates back here, number 6 is up here, and now I've got to locate the holes. If I'd made these panels up and then drilled the holes through the panels and into the U channel, then it would have been easy to find the holes, but finding the center of this U channels is, you know, you might miss or something and not get the hole lined up right. Where with a sheet metal screw, it doesn't really make any difference if it's off the center of the channel or not, but those nut plates just barely fit in the channels, so they have to be pretty much centered. The holes have to be pretty much centered. So I put the nut plates in first, and before I put the floorboards in and stuff, so I'd have access to them to get behind them with the bucking bars with the rivet squeezer and whatnot. And so now I'm suffering that. I have to locate these holes. And to locate these holes, I've been using this strap duplicator or hole finder. This is a long one to reach in long panels. I got this at Boeing Surplus. It has a little nipple down here on the bottom that sticks through, and a boss, hardened boss up here on the top for drilling into, and then a hardened drill bushing here. And this one happens to be for a number 30 hole. It's worked pretty well on several places that I've used it on the airframe and for different things, but I just couldn't get it to work on this. And one of the problems is I already have the nut plates in here, and this little nipple here is too big to go down into the nut plates. On the number 4s, it'll locate the hole, but it won't go down inside the hole. So, and then on number 6s, it'll go down in a little bit, but it won't go down into the nut plate itself. So there's that variance where you can be off on that. With this long strap that it has on here, this strap can get twisted out of alignment just a little bit. Although I didn't see that didn't seem to be the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that this didn't go down in the holes. And then you see underneath this nipple, there's the holder that's in. That holds everything off from there. And then this strap is about 60 thousandths thick. And then you've got a boss on top of that drill pad that you drill into. And then the same thing, you've got another 60 thousandths, although this one doesn't make that much different because it goes on top, but you've got a little bit of an extension underneath there to hold that apart so it doesn't necessarily get held close together. So with this standing off and the thickness of these panels holding that second panel off, I think that was what the problem was. Plus this is kind of an odd shape. It's got a twist to it. It's got a bend here, a smaller radius bend back here, although it's a longer leg, and then you've got this bend here, and this piece is kind of dog leg shape. It's not a square bend, it is a dog leg. So that's not square. And then you've got the same thing underneath here. The radius of these bends are more symmetrical than the ones on the top, but it's got a twist in it. So I decided to try to make it something a little more accurate. I took a wore out hacksaw blade and I ground the teeth off of it, and because this has a wave shape to it, I ground the sides of it also down and then ground it and rounded over the edges so they're smooth. And then I took it in to the spot welder and I spot welded it back here in the back in a couple spots to hold it together. I took it into the drill press, took a number 40 drill bit and drilled a hole through both sides, through both pieces, so that they're perfectly lined up. Now the reason I put my first spot welds all the way back here was so that it could keep these lined up, but I could open these straps up far enough that I could get my die in there. This is a dimpling die for dimpling a number 3 rivet, and I was able to get that in there and dimple one of these legs here, and then you can see the little nipple sticking out of there. Well, that's a number 3 flathead rivet, and it's right in there. I just took some super glue and glued that in the hole in the dimple, and that's a short number 3 rivet. I think it's a number 2 or 1.5 or something like that, but that's a real short number 3 rivet. So that'll fit down in the number 4 nut plates, and it'll fit into 6 real well. There's a little bit of slop in the 6, but these are only about 25 thousandths thick, these hacksaw blades, so that should give me a lot closer tolerance on my panel. Plus I went back in after I put that rivet in there and I took the spot welder and welded in up closer, so it's real tight there. There's not much open there at all. So we'll see how that works. Hopefully that'll give me a lot better hole. Well, I drilled out my first hole with my little hole finder, a little strap duplicator, whatever you want to call it, and it turned out just perfect. Hole wound up just exactly in the right spot. The only problem is I put a nice new drill bit in the drill motor. I drilled through there, and I should have stopped as the drill went into the metal once it marked it, because I drilled through and I drilled into my rivet and I drilled out my rivet. So now I gotta put a new rivet in there for the marker and fish out the tail of that one out of the screw. But it did come out just perfect, so that's good. I'm a lot happier with this. We'll see how it goes with the rest of them. Here's my first hole. I fished the tag end of that rivet that I drilled out. I pushed it out with a little bent piece of wire, cleared that nut plate out, and I drilled this hole out with a number 30 drill bit as a clearance hole for a number 4 screw. And I put the screw in there and it fit just perfect. So I took my strap over to the bench. I heated up the one leg that had the rivet super glued in it with a match until the super glue melted out, and then I was able to fish that leftover flathead rivet out of there. I happen to have some steel number 3-2 flathead rivets, and I super glued one of those in there. And then I brought it over here and set it up in my second hole, and I drilled it out with a number 40 drill bit. And it was off just a little bit. You could see into the hole, but I was able to re-drill it with a number 30 drill bit and pull it over till it lined up perfectly. So now I'm set up for my third hole there. It's all in there, ready to go. So I'll take the drill motor with a 30 bit in there, or that's a 40 bit. Now I'm just going to drill part way in there this time, so I'm not drilling out my rivet. I'll take my tool out of there. Just hold this out just a little bit. Drill a hole in there, and we'll check it and see how it lines up. Oh, that lines up perfect. That one hole lined up perfect. So I'll go ahead and drill a clearance hole in it. See how that lines up now. Okay, that's pretty darn close. Let's see if we can get a screw in there. Okay, that's working pretty good. So we'll keep that up then. We've got one more nut plate to drill out here in this for the number 4 screw, and then these across the bottom here are number 4 screws, and then on this side are number 6s. So we'll get these all drilled out and get this all clamped down, and then we'll start on the upper leg of it. I got the holes drilled for both the number 4 and the number 6 screws on this lower left-hand panel, except for the ones that go on this long piece here that goes parallel with the axis of the fuselage. I'm going to have to take these all out to lift that panel up, and then take the screws out of this right-hand panel before I can locate those holes. But I'm really happy with the way these holes located on this one. They came out really close. The ones on the number 6s have to be almost perfect because those are fixed nut plates in there, and they're not floating nut plates, they're fixed, so you have to have just about a perfect lineup on those holes. They all wound up real good. I got screws in each one of them. Number 4s are floating nut plates, but those holes are pretty close too. That's really nice. That worked a lot better than the other type of hole locator. So I'll go ahead and take these screws all out, take these screws out of this long section here, and mark those holes or get those screws out of that right hand panel anyway, and then I'll put this back on and mark those holes and get them drilled out. Well, I got all these holes in on this bottom. This is the left side and the right side. This is where they meet. Everything's all screwed in down here. Everything's all screwed up. Actually, these went pretty good with that new drill guide. A little bit of care on that, and I can get the holes pretty close, and then just going with the clearance drill I can pull them into where they need to go for those holes. These went down here, of course, they had the holes oversized on this lower piece, and so matching those up was a little more difficult, but it went pretty smooth. A lot easier than when I did this piece with what I had going on before. So now I roll this back over and do this top side. I'll start from the lower section, work my way up on that. This left panel is all drilled out, unscrewed on all the way around. And This went a whole lot better this time than the other side. Now I've got to decide whether I want to redo the other side or not. It's workable the way it is, so I probably won't. Yeah, this side went a whole lot nicer with that little jig that I made for drilling the holes. So I get it trimmed up. It needs to be trimmed all up and edges all cleaned up and stuff, but the hard part's done, I hope.